The following content is provided by MIT OpenCourseWare under a Creative Commons license. Additional information about our license and MIT OpenCourseWare in general is available at ocw.mit.edu.
Now we need to make it work, okay? But it's very, very powerful. It's interesting because it's the most important new thing after the 4 steps experiential learning cycle. This approach is very, it makes clear a lot of things, no? And it rescues the importance of tacit knowledge that in the experiential learning cycle it's not clear the role of tacit knowledge. So I think that with time we will develop methods for using this approach much more. Okay, yeah, two questions. Yes.
Mine is more of, I was thinking through it, because in the first phase you have like a socialization, and then it seems like when you were talking of the shift of power, and it's like you say like it rests on those who have the education or the power and all that, because I think because in the second phase, that's the second phase goal, so externalization, because I think because the way we define education, or the way mainstream society defines education, is that of a school, you know, a formal school, and that is why we think like people can. So that it does something when we think that way, that formal education is the way to really, you know, expand people's knowledge base and all that, to refine what they already know and all that. It can go to a power control, because I think because sometimes you obliterate, you annihilate, you know, you kill what you know. I'm talking about this because I come from a context of also working with indigenous peoples, you know, with tribes, and that's what we do basically when we define expansion of knowledge as formal education, you know. And I think that's dangerous, because then truly when people come and interact in society, then truly there are those who are powerful, you know. And when we go into a development work, we see that the solution for people like indigenous communities is to educate themselves. I'm not so sure if that's the way, but I also am not saying that that's not the way, because that's where, in my experience, that's where actually the tension is. Because how do you preserve a culture, you know, at the same time, how do people actually interact with mainstream society, because it has a different way of, you know, thinking, because it's educated, you know, it has the language, it's a very refined language and all that. So I don't know. I'm actually just throwing out something that grapples me, and that, you know, provides a lot of tension on the ground, on the realities. I was thinking, like, I'm not so sure that I come to think now of, how about in America? How do things work? Like, you know, when Black Americans actually appropriate the education of the white Americans, like, you know, is that something that's supposed to be? Because then I don't know. It's because when you try to do that, you become, in one sense, you're able to assimilate into the mainstream society. But in a sense, I don't know if that's actually like, you know, annihilating a whole cultural identity. I'm not so sure.
Okay. Yeah, you have a concern about this kind of issues.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because socialization is dangerous. Because it happens, as you say, so it happens so fluidly, you're not conscious about it, it goes around, it goes every day. And it's dangerous because, you know, we are all in a mainstream society. And what we assimilate are mainstream ideas, powerful ideas of the educated and of the great thinkers and all that. And I'm not so sure if, like, you know, sometimes you want to be a great thinker, but sometimes you think, like, you know, doesn't seem good. I don't know.
Okay, thank you. Yes, I need to control time. I will ask you to be a bit more direct to the point. You asked to talk something.
Oh, all I was going to say is that I also thought if you were going to diagram these,
Yes.
that it's interesting that nothing moves backwards, that there's no opportunity, which I think is not necessarily a bad thing. On your spiral, you don't move backwards, right? On how you're combining and internalizing your knowledge. And also, you know, the same. I really think the same with the reframing and the design. The process and how people get along may move backwards and forward, but you know that complete regression and deterioration is just not. I think it's very positive. It's just not part of the sort of motion.
Well, I think that there's regression in the sense that design ideas can get thrown out even after they come to a fairly far along the prototyping stage, which doesn't mean regression, but it means that that particular design is now back to the drawing board, quite literally. And I was thinking about your comment on here. I think that reframing might be a way that you could go back on that loop. You know, kind of you're retraining yourself to rethink in a new way, and then you're kind of unlearning certain.
I don't know that I agree.
The example would be goat.
Yeah.
You know, I learned that in tacit to tacit, but then I had to, you know, learn it formally. But just when you told me, or the teacher told me not to say goat, I didn't learn it. I had to go back and hear it, and I go, oh, it's went. So it's not as linear as it might be, as it might seem.
It's always iterative.
Yeah.
We can come back again from the beginning. No, the question is that when we come back to the beginning, we are different. This is okay. So we have another thing in our mind. We could talk about this. It's very interesting, but we need to go forward with our program today. Okay. We have to now to discuss about the theme of theory in use, series of actions, knowing in action, some basic concepts of the Sean's approach. I will make a brief presentation. This time will be really brief presentation. Okay. We need your password because I forgot it in the. Okay. Excuse me. We could talk about these kind of issues a lot because are very, very interesting. But this course is only introductory. It's only to see that this exists, not for going much deeper in each one of the issues. No? This is from Japan. It's based most of all in the understanding of Oriental people about reality. It's very different from the Occidental vision. But now, most of people who are studying this here in the United States are taking this approach, are including this approach. Está aquí en el... ¿no? Buscas ahí. No, tienes que ir... anda la flechita. Ahí está. My computer. Remove disk. Remove disk. Theory in use. Okay. No. I think that I have that. Let me see. Esta es eso. Okay. Can you? Yeah. The first idea is that theory are means. We don't think always in theory as means. And theory in use are means. Okay. Thank you. Sean and Aris tried to develop an understanding of theories of action. And in the three, they express two basic kinds of theories of action: spousal theories and theories in use. But the general term they use is theory of action. And they define it this way: if I want, in situation C, if I want the consequence C, in situation S, if I want the consequence C, under some conditions, I should do something. This is the concept they use for theory. Okay? And they say that theory are used for three ends, for three goals. For explanation something that we do, we need the other people to understand why we are doing this. For prediction, and for managing the process of change. These three main purposes of theories. Okay? They work very they try to make a very clear difference between spousal theories and theory in use. Spousal theories is how we explain things. And theory in use is the cognitive part of our actions. When we act, we think at the same time that we are acting. Okay? We don't act. When we are doing something, we are not just doing something. We are imagining things, we are analyzing things, we are evaluating what we are doing in the moment that we are doing. We rethink in the process of the action. All this support for, cognitive support for our action is what they call theory in use. Okay? They say that it's important to be aware of our theory in use because our theory in use define our performance but also define our ineffectiveness. Okay? With some kind of theory in use, we are capable of doing some things and incapable of doing other things. And if you are not aware about how we are reasoning in the action, we will not be able to solve this kind of ineffectiveness. Okay? Yeah. Two ideas here. One is that our theory in use are, in general, 1 generation old. The way we think in practice is not the way we are studying. It's not our updated knowledge. The way we think in action is the way we learn it throughout our lives. We learn from our parents, from our friends, from our experience. And in general, these ideas are already out of date. So, theory in use is a construction made with bricks from the last generation knowledge that we, in some way, organize them for make them useful. But if we ask our theory about feeding, fitness, climate, weather, football, we always have a theory that is not at the same level that the science is about these issues. In feeding is very, very interesting to see the theory people have about nutrition. Most of the theory about nutrition is not adequate in when they feed their children, for example. When the baby stopped to feed milk and began to feed solid food, it's interesting to talk with mothers about the theory they have of nutrition in babies. Some of the ideas I found have five centuries old. Some decades is absolutely common that we have in our theory in use. Very old knowledge combined with knowledge not so old, but in general the combination is old. The other idea important in this is that theory in use are group of assumptions. Are assumptions organized in some way. So we are not aware about them. Okay? Can you, please? There is a theory in use in building design. We were talking about this. Okay? In diagnosis, in planning of cities. The effort of Sean was help people to modernize their theories in use. What is the source for constructing theories in use? For discover the theories in use is observing the action in itself. It's the most important source. And they try to organize knowledge about theory in use around three things. Governing variables. I will explain this a bit more later, okay? Action strategies and assumptions. They say they understand that we frame problems using these three groups of factors. Yeah? Okay. And I am suggesting this for the exercise that we will do next. Okay? How we can discover the theory in use? We may have two kinds of situations. The starting point may be an espousal theory. One person is explaining me how he visualized the solution of a problem. And the other situation is I have a sequence of actions that I can look how it happened. The first question, the first step is to be clear about the logic of the espousal theory or the logic of the actions. I will not comment, I will not analyze, I will just try to to describe them in a very clear way. When we are talking with people, it's necessary to repeat the argumentation of the person, to be clear that we have understood in the same way the person is explaining his idea. It's the first step. Okay? We need to be clear that we got to understand the way the person is thinking or the logic of their actions. The second step is to go deeper. And the most important two we have found, it's interesting because I had this conclusion from my work before to meet Claudia and Ceasar. And in CRCP, they use the same two, exactly the same two. It's the chain of whys. Is when one person describes the actions, we explain, we ask why the next action was made after that. Okay? The relation between the actions should be questioned for understanding why the person did this new action. Okay? And so we can discover we have the actions, and we discover a lot of whys under the actions. Okay? Not visible at the beginning.
In Spanish, we call it la pregunta del niño, which is the question of the child. You know, a child is always saying, why? You know, why not? Explain why, trying to understand.
Yes.
So go deep to understand, like, by just continuing asking the question, why?
Is that a common phrase, or is that just how you guys describe it when you're speaking?
The chain of whys?
Yeah.
The chain.
No, the pregunta del niño.
Oh.
It's a common.
Yes.
When we're describing this, it's in English here at CRCP we call it the exhaustion of the whys.
Exhaustion of the whys.
And
Yes. Yes, I was using the concept of chain of whys. I was using the idea of chain of whys because the next why is connected to the first one. Okay? And we get deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper. The chain of whys is very powerful for going from tacit to explicit. When the children ask why, they are trying to understand the logic of the actions. Okay? It's very powerful. So, at the end of the chain of whys, we have the same actions and we have a portfolio of whys. Okay? Once we have a lot of whys, we try to discover the relation among the assumptions. When we have a lot of assumptions, we try to understand the logic of the assumptions. Okay? We can construct with this two parts of, can you come back? Yes. Answering the whys and constructing the relation among the assumptions, we will be clear about these two parts. Okay? More general, can you come back? A more general level of analysis is when we are, yes. A more general level of analysis is when we are able to discover the governing variables. We will not make this exercise now, but it requires to see all the approach and to discover the principles of these actions. Okay? The fifth step is to construct the theory in use based on these elements. We will make an exercise today only until step 1, 2, and 3. Okay? We have a very good example, you will see, and we will make this exercise. My idea is to talk about these questions, the conceptual questions of here, after the exercise. Because I think that we get much more concreteness and depth when we discuss after the exercise. Okay? So now we will have a break. But before the break, I'd like to ask you some things. One, we need to begin the classes more more on time. We need to begin the classes on time, I will ask you. And we need not to lose much time in the breaks. 15 minutes is okay for you in the break? Okay, we will begin everything 11 less 15 minutes, for we have time to talk, okay?
Quarter to
Can we make it 10?
10 to 11?
Huh?
Can we make it 10?
No.
10 minutes?
10 minutes?
Go to those puppies, chop them back.
Yes, that's the problem.
Yeah.
No? Okay, 15 minutes, but we will begin exactly 15 minutes, okay? Thank you very much. The exercise will be, you will have few time to conceive a solution to this problem. You will be able to define the problem and to create a solution for this problem. You will not have much time. The purpose is not to have a good solution. The purpose is to create material for reflecting on it. Okay? And we have thought that each person has 5 minutes, no? 5 minutes for conceiving his solution to this problem individually. After that, we will form groups, and each group will decide for one solution.
The solution or more?
Strategies
Strategy
for tackling the problem.
Yes, any strategy for tackling the problem. Okay?
What is your definition of the problem?
You are free to define the problem. You have the information, okay? You can look these two groups of data. We are talking about basically on the white people and the African American people. You don't need to treat the other components. Okay? Just the first two. Okay? 5 minutes. Is the graphic, okay? You don't need to consider the other components that are in the text. Dos grupos o tres grupos. Tenemos poca gente. Dos grupos. The idea is to create 3 groups in aleatory. Aleatory, ¿cómo se dice
So
aleatory?
you just count 1, 2, 3.
1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Okay?
Lee?
Can you say it?
1, 2, 3.
1,
2.
2.
No, you're 3.
3, okay?
1.
She will not participate now. Okay. The ones meet together, the 2s meet together, the 3s meet together. And they, in each group, will try to find a common proposition. If it's not possible to achieve a common proposition, you can present 2. But the effort should be to achieve a common proposition, okay? You have 10 minutes.
Common definition of the problem.
Yes.
And then a common, some strategy for tackling the problem.
Okay?
1's here, 2's there, and 3's over here.
Sí. Hemos quedado 10 minutos, ¿no? Está bien. ¿No? 15 hemos quedado.
No, 10.
¿Ah? Hemos quedado 10. Hemos quedado 10. No necesito mantener 10. Para que después tengamos tiempo.
So you have 10 minutes.
To conquer the entire problem of
Yeah.
juvenile justice in the United States courts.
Yeah.
Go.
Maybe somebody needs space here.
You are MIT, so
What?
we assume that, that in 10 minutes we have a solution.
Take my place. Take my place.
I don't know what I'm doing here. Let's be fair.
I'll try to find a seat.
Okay.
Okay, you know, being me, I'm going to say that. Being me, I'm going to say
It's 11. 5 minutes for 11, okay? In 11, 10 minutes. Okay.
We go through our process of how we came to a problem definition. We go through the process. Yes, but
Okay, just want to get that out there. Okay, so my initial thoughts were, what were my initial thoughts? I didn't really think much about framing the problem. The first 2 things that popped to mind was there needs to be a way to better design the services and flow through the court system. And to reframe the question, what are we really looking at? And does this data give us any information about the question of why the populations are so skewed?
Racial profiling.
Does it give you any real information about why the I was thinking more about the data. Yeah, why the populations break down the way they do. Why they're so skewed.
I made a lot of assumptions because we didn't have a lot of. So based on what I know about my initial gut response to looking at 70-30 split white and African American and a lot of direct charges by whites, personal property charges on the black side, maybe there's poverty there. I wasn't sure, but I guess. And I thought, why is there poverty? Well, what can you do to eradicate that problem? I thought, well, one way to do that is through education. So I think about job training and rehabilitation programs. And then another thing that occurred is that maybe the problem was
see
racial discrimination.
you see the lack of education and generations kind of working together to create poor economic outcomes.
Discrimination and racial change. Lawyers and educators.
Because the population is
I don't know that I got to proposing a solution, but I was trying to understand the problem, and I was looking at it, and I agreed that data was bad. So I was trying to understand, other ways to get more data, and reframing the problem not just as a racial problem, but an economics problem. For the white kids that are doing the drug things, in the same socioeconomic thing as the black kids that are doing this, rather than black or white. Geography, gender, are most of these obviously likely to be male? What does that mean? And studying or understanding offenders and non-offenders, we often just look at offenders and begin to make assumptions. But what's going on with the non-offenders with similar, let's say, characteristics that are not offending versus those that are. And I'm trying to understand that to come up with solutions. I was also trying to look at the source and understanding just kind of the scope of the source. And it's 1 year. Have there been trends that we might want to look at to help us discover
I
something?
thought about that too. Like, is this a blip? Is
No,
that why they have this
exactly.
issue?
Having discover something good or bad, is it getting better, is it getting worse, what does it mean, how do we react, what would we do, what kind of solutions would we propose in one case versus another. And that was, and also, so for me it was getting away from the assumptions of, okay, these are the 4 races that we're going to look at, and also, because that lets you to assume that a person can be in one or another.
Well,
Those are my thoughts. I don't know about proposing a solution. But
what is the question? Are we looking at the populations and why the numbers are skewed the way they are in terms of their general representation in the juvenile system? Or are we looking at the differences in the quality of crime or the nature of the crime? What are we supposed to look at in this data?
Well, I think that's what we're
we'll have to
we're
agree
defining
on
the problem.
Yeah, we have to define the problem. Like, here's this number.
Is the problem the data is bad? We need more data. What would that data be? The problem, we have limited data, but we have to come up with a solution because something's going to happen tomorrow.
Strategy.
And we have to have a strategy because everyone's going to yell, hey, do you want? So
Because we are.
what you got.
Okay, so my position on it is this is just personal.
Interesting look
I
at
really,
breakouts.
oh God, how do I put this nicely? I really don't give a shit what the juvenile offender's crime is. What I care about is that there's such overrepresentation of various ethnic groups. Do you understand what I mean? That indicates to me that something is inherently truly wrong, like on a juvenile justice scale. My concern is not what they're in jail for. Primarily, my concern is that you have this tremendous skewing of the prison population.
But don't you think that a skewed type of conviction tells you something about why that might happen, that you have that racial skew? I think that to me is the interesting thing. You have 2 pieces of data. From those 2, you can start to put together some kind of picture as to why you might. I mean, obviously there's an issue here. Whites getting in jail less than blacks. There's a very clear problem. Why is that happening? Well, that seems to be like a major problem. Is that just 2003 or what can you tell from this very scant data that we have down here? Certainly, I think it's important to also ask the question of what other data might you want to have in order to really understand what is going on. But just based on these 2, I think you can. The reason that this is I don't think that this is a real thing.
No, I don't understand it either. But
One question
that
I
would be my
want.
first question.
The exercise right now is like constructing a theory about what could be happening, or the exercise right now is just trying to identify possible problems.
The 2 things I think we're supposed to do is define a problem together if we can agree on what the problem is, and then the second one is propose a strategy. And we don't have to be detailed, but then, so what would you do about it? Or what
So our
should we
theory
do?
would be what are sensible problems,
Right.
or
We
if there are
have
several,
to have a common definition of the problem.
or if there are several.
One of the things that I also was just thinking about are some of the assumptions the context, right? You know, and what brought this to mind was something I'll share, but the assumption is whites, African Americans, Native Americans, and Asian Pacific Islanders are being arrested in equal proportion to the number of crimes that they're actually committing. You know, we're assuming an equitable right.
Well, it's not even being arrested, it's being prosecuted.
Whatever, but that the context is fair and equitable right to begin with. So, or you know, is it overrepresented? Is it a catching problem, which is and when what brought that to mind was the sheriff in Louisiana was just arrested for the murder of 2 black kids back 40 years ago. You know, he didn't get caught. You know, no one pursued him in that context. We're pursuing him in this context. So, you know, so is it a where's the necessary to reframe the problem? Why is my killing 2 black kids? It wasn't obviously 40 years. So just to, you know, put an assumption to work at how this.
So we can't necessarily
No, it's just of the crimes that they're prosecuted for or enter the system about.
All you can really say is that for some reason or other, a lot of black people are being prosecuted primarily for person crimes and a little bit for property. They're kind of split along all 3 of them, but primarily person. Well, I guess I didn't look at that. I thought it was property crimes. So maybe
and you know, it doesn't specify whether or not the person-to-person crimes have any drug component to it. You know, there's a big difference between drug-related possession and drug-related violence. You know, and
I mean, I guess I don't know anything about person crimes.
no.
Are we going to be able to come to a common? Should we try to come to a common definition of the problem?
I assume there's not any crimes refers to rape, murder.
even the white people
Or we want to
still,
simplify it?
still a lot of person crimes, property crimes. It's not like
And is it
there's sort of a slight like this.
and is it a blip? Is it a
Okay, so the only common
how would you
definition
even
of
do an analysis of? I mean, I suppose you could.
Well, I think it boils down to what
Do an analysis of
why do we
prosecution versus non-prosecution of criminals that have been
that was interesting.
I will give you 5 minutes more writing down in the sheet of paper, okay?
Wow, that was fast.
What if we do it this way? We define a hypothesized problem, and then we state the need for data that we would need to
That's fine.
get to in order to, you know, so we say, oh, we think that the problem is that people aren't being prosecuted properly or people aren't being caught properly. And then the next one is the data that we would need in order to get.
I think the problem is I think the first of the problems is we're only looking at one tiny sliver. We can't even begin to address this.
Sure,
without
but what's the data that you need to collect to get it?
Right, and see that, but I would define our primary problem as the extraordinary lack of data. Like
But
this
that's
is
always
just
going to be the problem.
and that you should be able to design, like it's a design question, how do you design a system for better gathering data? And I don't think we should hypothesize anything about why.
But if
Well,
you
I
don't
think
have
that's a theory. That's a theory in use. We're trying to prove our data. Whereas with our spouse theory, what's the underlying problem? Right. You know, it's not.
Begin to write.
So the definition
My suggestion is begin to write the model, okay? To complete what you have.
The problem is crimes being committed.
We don't need to have a final solution, okay? It's a material for discussion, what we are preparing, okay?
Last time our final solution is 6.2. So,
I suggest
Yeah, who's gonna write?
Scribble something.
I mean, obviously the problem is we don't have data, but I don't think that's really a very useful exercise.
Really?
it's always going to be a problem. I mean, if they wanted us to have all these data, then they would have taught the whole class on it.
I think that's the point of the exercise, is to show that one piece of data is never all the data.
But never will you have all the data.
The point of the exercise is to understand the assumptions that go through
The exercise is try to argue and see if three people can come to defining a problem in the same way.
Because we're trying to understand theories of use. We're not trying to understand.
Well,
Based on
one
this, we know
And we put our theories in use out on the table.
You look at, right, trying to understand what our assumptions are, what kind of, how we came to an action strategy, and trying to underline. The next thing we're going to do, I'm sure, is to go through a chain of why and understand how we came to the assumptions we did in order to come up with the solution to the problem.
The why thing that we're going to do next.
Yeah. I don't think that the next step is going to be what's the data that we need in order to solve this particular problem. Because I don't think anybody really cares about that. That's
So what is our problem?
I'm willing to go back to the hypothesis and the statement of data that we would need in order to find that. And maybe, maybe you would plug that data and say, oh, this is the data that we need, but she's really not happy with this solution.
It's okay.
That's all right.
Okay,
Exactly.
well,
That's okay.
I'll go with the majority.
But what's the
democracy?
it presents two. So problem one is
Crime happens.
paucity of data. Solution one. More data. Problem two, we're going to say is hypothesis. Well, I think we want to find out more about whether or not the problem is related to people getting caught prosecuted. Isn't that what you're saying?
It's just that, like, wasn't.
We could throw out a couple of hypotheses and say
Population prosecuted versus population caught.
It's important to
Exactly. We can go to wherever step in the process. But I think that's interesting. It's like,
Population that population caught versus there you go. Caught and prosecuted versus enter the system at all.
These are. I don't even know.
Because in order to be included,
so
you're referred to social services. You're referred to
juvenile court.
Juvenile court. You're referred to foster care.
No. Yeah, I don't know what that means.
So,
what you have.
what's the second hypothesis?
What's a problem? The problem is
Socioeconomic status, or you just want it. So let's just say, yeah, and maybe there's a socioeconomic, not race. So then the data, the solution is data on. You want more data, or just like
prosecuting system? No, we don't want data. I mean, yes, we want data, but what's the solution? Is it improve catch and prosecute system? I guess is what you're saying. What we're saying.
What you really want is to improve
research
the process
assuming
and the flow of how juvenile offenders move through the system.
better economic status, which then lowers crime. Then you could take youth or take a population and put it through that, which you can do it in a rigorous way. So you test your
And then the socioeconomic one.
we're not sure this is the right model.
Prevention.
So if we do an intervention and then
Socioeconomic
crosswalk
interventions that prevent
or what's true about it. Would that work?
Or is that our the problem is the socioeconomic one.
right economic development.
Well, preventative and direct direct services. Effective direct services, essentially.
It seems like it's probably more root cause kind of issue. It's more of a band-aid. This makes it more equitable.
No, that's not
Essentially
true.
might solve the problem.
Because if you improve the process and the flow of people moving through the system, you would also have to address the fact that once you've been arrested, it's on your record forever. If you're convicted or arrested for convicted on a drug charge, you can't ever get federal financial aid. You can't live in public housing. You can't get a lease. You can never again pass a credit check or a background check.
That actually helps the people who are then caught. That to me would seem like a problem. Because if it doesn't actually prevent people from doing it, it's still people are still doing all the things that prevents people from reintegrating into society, so that basically cost the rest of their life.
Pretty much.
It doesn't necessarily mean that people even know that that's the case. And it doesn't
So
necessarily
wouldn't that be part of
prevent-
improving the process?
What?
No.
Wouldn't that be part of improving the process?
What you're thinking. If I'm a police officer, I'm like, no, I want to catch more of these bad guys. And yes, that's
Right. Well, it's just my own personal political stance. It doesn't really solve anything.
But
If that's your problem.
if that's how you find the
yeah.
problem, like, if our problem is to better catch and prosecute bad guys,
Right. That the
then I want to
equity
better catch and
is
prosecute all bad guys, white guys, black guys.
basically we need to catch more white guys.
Exactly.
The problem definition. Okay, well, how about we have fewer black guys being caught, more white guys getting caught for the guys are already good.
Exactly.
Well, part of that is going to be which percentage of these kids are repeat offenders. Yeah. And that's the critical point that's missing.
I think the point is not just to analyze so much the problem so much as the process for understanding of what the problem is.
Okay. Yeah. All right, good. Oh, okay.
Just a concept.
I like it, problem two.
Problem two,
This is one. We want more bad guys caught.
I think I like the second. More bad guys caught.
I like it.
The problem is not society, the problem is that more disability people out there.
Yeah, and you know, if I'm an equitable police officer, I want all bad guys caught.
All bad
If
guys.
I'm a racist police officer, you know, more black guys are actually, more than 30% are actually committing crimes. This number should be higher.
There's different types of data. I mean, there's the scientific data, and there's the data working in these situations.
Okay. Which group will be first? Thank you. Can you begin?
For Ezra.
But before you begin, I need to explain our role of the listeners. Our effort will be, first, try to understand the solution. Second, we can make them questions of whys. Okay? Trying to discover the logic. Okay? After your group present, you will make questions to the other people. Okay? Yeah?
So, overall, for the whole exercise, I think we were in agreement that there was an overall problem of lack of data and bad data, and that we needed to get better data in order to really get to really have any sort of understanding what the problem was or what the solution was. We would definitely need to have a lot more data. But given the fact that we had 15 minutes to solve the world's problems and one sheet of paper to do it, we were a little bit more practice oriented and had to come to some sort of decision about what a problem might be. So we thought that maybe if we made a couple of hypotheses about what the problem might be, that would give us some idea of what the data would be that we would need to go out and collect in order to fully understand whether or not our hypotheses were correct about that. And then we came up with some potential solutions that we could think of if it were the case that these hypotheses were correct. So before we even got the data, what might we even do to correct? Is there something we can do? What would we do to correct those things? So one hypothesis was that the people, clearly there's some race disparity here, but we don't know why. The offense profiles don't really give us a heck of a lot more information. So one of the ideas was maybe it's the fact that more white people are committing crimes. They're just not being caught, or they're being caught and not being prosecuted. So maybe the problem is systematic within the court system. So that was one hypothesis. The second hypothesis was, well, maybe we need to understand, maybe it's socioeconomic and not a racial issue at all. And so those two hypotheses would then lead to completely different solutions. One would be you need to improve the process and the flow of offenders through the system. You basically need to get all the bad guys and make sure they're all caught and prosecuted. The other one is a little bit more back-end preventative, thinking about economic development and some sort of effective set of direct services that might have some sort of direct change on the root problem itself, as opposed to the later prosecution.
Anyone wants to make some questions to them?
Why is the paucity of data problematic?
Paucity of data, why is that problematic?
Paucity of data. I thought the paucity of data was incomplete because, is it...
Oh, it's problematic.
Oh, problematic. I thought the paucity of data was problematic because it only provides one extremely narrow piece of information from which to view a much broader problem. And that part of it is certainly looking at it from an economic standpoint, how many rich kids commit crimes versus poor kids commit crimes. I mean, all that sort of stuff. Like, what's your data looking like just on a number of fronts. I haven't had enough caffeine, that I thought in order to really form a better definition of the problem within the exercise, we would have needed additional pieces of information.
Those pieces being maybe, why is it that we have a 70-30 split between different races? What is the socioeconomic background of those different people who are committing these crimes? How many people are repeat offenders, and of what crimes and what race and what socioeconomic status? Education levels, gender, a number of different things, age, a number of different things that might give you a clearer sense of, is this in some small suburb of Chicago, or is this right in the inner city, or what are we talking about here?
And the other thing is how many are you looking at? Because if you have 100 kids who are white committing crimes, and 78% of them have drug offenses, and 67% have people who are property offenses, it's a much different number than if you have 100,000 African American kids moving through the same court system, and then you break it up like 16%, 30%.
Another just trends. Is this? There was a 1-year photograph of the numbers. Trends would have been interesting. Is it getting better or worse?
More data.
What does that mean? If it's getting better, what kind of solution would we propose versus getting worse? What kind of solution would we propose?
We're talking about the conditions that we have for tackling the problem. But we need to go forward in the discussion about the problem and the solutions. Okay? The problem of the different level of participation of black people in the population and in the court. the problem you have had trying to solve this problem, okay, is different from the other groups. So we should focus on the same, okay, the same problem. That is the problem that you formulated as problem 2. Okay? The first is a problem of the group. Okay? The second is the problem of the exercise. All the groups have the same problem. You have incomplete information, all the groups. And frequently in society we need to solve problems with incomplete information. So we construct assumptions. It's a very good example that we need to construct assumptions because we have not enough information. Okay? Let's try to understand the problem and the solution you made. For you, the first problem is
population caught and prosecuted. Like, how many people are? Maybe the problem is with the prosecution. You know, whether or not maybe more black people are being caught and prosecuted for their crimes. Maybe white people are not being caught, or maybe they're not being prosecuted. This seems to suggest, it says referrals to the juvenile court, so it doesn't suggest that they're actually prosecuted, I guess, but we're not really sure. Maybe there's some sort of prosecution.
Okay. The question is why you formulated this hypothesis. Why do you think that this hypothesis should be trustful?
Well, I think we were looking at the discrepancy between the white and black population. I guess that was sort of the overall problem that we saw on the sheet was there seems to be fewer white people being caught and referred to juvenile court in relation to their overall population than there are African Americans in relation to their overall population.
Okay.
We assumed the problem for us, the way we first phrased it there was that this problem is an inequitable justice system.
Justice system.
Yeah, so it was at the catch and prosecute level.
Okay, not necessarily a social problem in itself.
Right.
Right.
No?
That's one.
That was one of the
hypothesis.
problems we proposed.
We're trying to come up with a number of hypotheses for what the problem could be.
We got one assumption, okay? The exercise is working. Yeah, okay. And why did you thought that should be a socio-economic issue and not a racial issue?
That was the second hypothesis.
It's a
Yes.
hypothesis.
Yeah, the second hypothesis. Why?
We don't have any data to substantiate that.
No,
But it's,
yes, but you should assume 50 different hypotheses. Why you selected this one?
I assumed that, well, for one reason, based on this, is that there are really more than 4 races. And that there are really more than you can be more than one race. And so for me, it was like, well, what's behind that?
Okay.
The definition of the data.
Okay. Can you see the difference between the explanation and what is written in the sheet? No? The assumption is that maybe not only racial issues, no? With the information we have. Okay, but in the spousal theory we have there, we are saying that it's a socio-economic problem, not a race. No? Okay. You was asking to make some question? Or some comment?
It was sort of a comment on the why that we would come up with this hypothesis, thinking back to the framing exercise, is that that's our frame of reference. We've got experience. We all bring something to this discussion based on our experience. So we'll frame hypotheses based on our experiences.
Mm-hmm.
That would be the why of those hypotheses. It's not only the information that's presented here, which is inadequate.
Exactly.
It's our background
Yes.
experience that we've had that caused these. I mean, that we would. I mean, we look at this, and I don't think there's anybody in the room that didn't have a hypothesis as to the why, based on our experience.
Okay. Yes. Correct. Yes. A very good comment. I think that it explains how we have been working in our minds, in reality. Yes. Okay. Thank you.
But you have to just see, they're covering their base, though. If you look, it's too, I mean, it's, I think this exercise would work better if we just focused on one of them. Okay?
Yes, but we have now.
Two opposite ones.
Yes, but it is the situation we have this moment. Okay? Let's go to the solution. Can you explain the solution? Improve?
Sure. Improve the process and the flow of offenders moving through the system. So maybe there's something about training the police. Maybe there's some sort of racial training that they need to undergo in order to. Maybe they're catching more black criminals because they think that they're committing more crimes. Maybe they're letting off more white criminals because they think they aren't. Maybe there's something about the prosecution system where the court system isn't prosecuting white offenders for various reasons, or is acting more harshly towards African American offenders. So maybe that's the problem. Something to do with
Okay.
There's also a certain amount of stagnancy in juvenile justice because they're juveniles. So when they enter a system and they're referred to juvenile court, it brings in social services, it brings in foster care, it brings in a whole different group of people, which slows the process down. I mean, as juveniles, they have certain rights and are processed very differently than adults are processed. So part of that is the flow through the system. Somebody's mom has to come to court, but nobody really knows where she is, so they spend 6 or 8 months sending out letters because she might be living with this cousin or this friend. In the meantime, this kid just languishes, and that would not be happening if there was a better designed process.
Okay. You are clear about. You begin to express saying it may be that we hypothesize that, so you are aware about some hypothesis, okay? The effort should be go a bit forward. Why do you think that it can be a question of discrimination in the prosecution? No? Why do you think that should be the case? Do you have some reasons for why do you think that?
Well, I think it gets back to the assumptions that you were talking about with previous knowledge of.
Can you give some? Okay, but it's the general name of the assumption. I need the concrete name.
Racism exists. Racism exists.
Yes, you can put it, but this is too general. Okay. You cannot define this concrete hypothesis.
It's our theory in use.
No, I am trying to get that he should be able to explain why he thinks that the justice system is prosecuting more black people. Why do you think that?
I don't necessarily think that. I just think that's a possibility. Possible.
Yes, I understand. But once you say, at the moment that you say it's a possibility, you begin to work with this. Okay? This is the problem in thinking. At the moment that I hypothesize something, I begin to work with it as it was true. Okay? So it's very dangerous to make hypotheses.
Well, I think we've started to explain the logic of that one, which was the assumption is maybe that police are more attentive to black crime than white crime.
Okay.
That's what we were saying before.
So is the
okay.
thing racial? Do you think it boils down to racial
Well, we don't have any other data to make any assumptions.
But if you say that the assumption actually translates itself into a judicial system that's actually biased or racist.
Our participation is not to help them to answer the question. It's to make questions to them, okay? To put them in problems, okay? Okay? Not try to understand what they are trying to say for helping them, but to bomb them with a lot of questions. Okay? Bombard them with a lot of questions.
But Sebastiao,
yes.
We all had the same problem that we approached.
You have your time, okay, at the front. A bit later. Okay, a bit later.
What's your model for precisely how race would impact the justice system? Like, what's the mechanism or the process by which it actually change how it works? Would that help?
Great.
How we would propose to change
The solution?
No, you're saying the hypothesis one, population is prosecuted in a different way
Depending on race.
So say, what's your model for understanding how race enters into changing the outcome?
Oh, how we would understand if that were in each case, like what kind of data we would need to collect in order to make that.
Sure. Or I mean, just what's the mechanism? Like, suppose it's true. What is it about race that makes the justice system prosecute an African American youth different than, or catch an American youth or prosecute an African American youth differently than a white youth?
You're going to process the people that enter the system. So part of the question is,
Are you? I mean, that's an assumption.
you're going to prosecute the people that enter the system, or you're going to have no one to prosecute. And part of the hypothesis from my previous experience is that fewer white kids are going to enter the system at all.
Okay, so your model is that more white kids get, or more black kids get caught relative to white kids. Right?
No, I think that the white kids who get caught don't enter the system.
Okay, we have she explicit an idea for it was not clear. Now we have clarity about this idea. Okay, I think that is enough for you. Thank you very much. Let's change the target. Who will be the next? Who there? Okay, thank you very much. And thank you for your help.
Musical chairs.
Chris, it's not your day with that desk.
No, it's not. It's actually not my day with any of these guys.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, what's your name? Jody. So going back to what Jody said, that when you look at these problems, you oftentimes bring your background experience to the situation. And from our group, all three of us were not from America. And we both were like, why is everything in America always categorized in terms of race? It's something that's very prevalent and very predominant that's here, that if you're not from here and you come here, you recognize it and you pick it up pretty quickly. So what we kind of did is turn the problem on its head a little bit and kind of reframed it, I guess maybe based on, like our background. So the problem is, why is juvenile delinquency being looked at as, being viewed as a problem of race? And really our solution is to reframe the problem in terms of thinking about it, you know, what is going on with our youth in general, whether black or white, or red or yellow or whatever. Why is it that they feel that they need to turn to either drugs or to personal property crime or any type of crime? Why do they feel the need to turn to these outlets, you know, in their lives as young people? And so our solution is really to take a step back and not look at what happens when they get into the system, but how can we prevent them from entering the system in the first place? And that might be in terms of, you know, providing opportunities and alternatives for these youth, whether that's education, skill building, whatever it takes to just keep them out of the system in the first place, so that we don't, you know, get to this point where we have such a problem with all these youths in the system, whether they're there for drugs or whether they're there for personal property, you know, or whatever. So that was kind of the way that we reframed it. But how can we be effective before they enter the system, not, you know, once they get there?
Okay. Why do you think that should be more effective to act before they enter to the system? It's your assumption,
yeah.
No? Why do you think that this is more effective?
Because that way you work on the prevention of the situation. You're not waiting to see what happens.
Okay. Why do you think that it's possible to prevent the situation? Do you think? It's very interesting, because if we are not prepared, it's not easy to discover in this moment the source of our beliefs.
Tacit to explicit.
Exactly. Okay? Yeah?
I mean, I think that it's, you know, it's a matter of, you know, trying to put a Band-Aid on something once the cut's already there. But how can you prevent people from getting in the system in the first place? I do believe that it can be done. I believe that if you can provide people with, you know, opportunities, and better alternatives, if you can support groups and like support youth and help them to see a tangible vision for their lives, that it can be possible. You know, and that's going to come from community support, whether in school or, you know, in the family, or
okay.
You know, helping them rise economically, providing skills so that they can have, you know, meaningful jobs.
Yeah, okay. Now the reason is clear. No? We need to move at two levels at the same time in our mind. At the level of the problem and at the level of our cognitive task. Okay? How we think. We need to manage these two levels in our mind.
I was just going to ask a follow-up question on that might help tease out the assumption as well. What do you think about the sociological theory that laws exist to create the boundaries of society, and that without lawbreakers you can have no social norms and social rules? So it is actually impossible to prevent all problems from occurring, because without problem definition you have no normative.
No, I mean, obviously I don't think that, you know, by, you know, having prevention programs set up so people don't enter the system, that doesn't mean that, you know, we're going to have 100% nobody's, you know, going to be there. But I do think that you can see, you know, maybe some lowering or some improvements in those levels. But I mean, it's never going to be like a 100% crime-free society. I don't think that's...
Oh, she asked it first after you.
Why do you presume that the only way that youth has a voice is through crime? That they have no alternative voice already?
No, we were saying that. I'm sorry, I didn't explain that very much. We were saying also, like, in terms of, you know, figuring out how to prevent youth from entering the system, that the youth should be a part of that process. So it shouldn't just be a bunch of adults or policemen or justice people sitting around and deciding, okay, this is how we're going to prevent youth from being in the system. but to give them a voice and allow them to participate and form solutions, to their, own problem of why, they enter that system. So that's
Okay.
what that was for.
Okay. You?
I was just going to say in response to why do we think it can be prevented, if that's the solution, the assumption then would be that it's a choice that the youth are making, that crime is a choice.
Mm.
If they have a choice, then it's preventable.
Yeah. Okay. This is the idea.
Yeah, I think they do have a choice, but I think it has to be
But you have
within
to
the right
give them a
environment.
choice.
Right,
They
exactly.
have
They
the
have
opportunity
to,
to
right,
make a
exactly.
choice.
And also another thing, and I think it's very important here, and we started discussing about it, is the issue of race. I think that's what is behind all this. What is race? Why do you speak about race so much? What does that mean? What is race? It's just the color of the skin? It's something else? How can you define, how can you give this data based on race? Why is not based on something else? Would you have a different data if it was based on something else? I mean, all these issues, I think it makes sense.
But even assuming that,
Okay. You are asking question to her, no?
yeah,
Okay.
even assuming that we know that it's almost impossible to tell what people's races are. So from a sociological perspective, it's very difficult to make a graph like this. However, we do know that people make presumptions based upon very external appearances of people. Whether they perceive the real race or not is pretty much a useless.
I don't know what that is, the real race.
There isn't such a thing. That's why I'm saying that it's not really very useful to make any sort of argument like, well, African American is a meaningless category because this person's mixed. They're not really fully, whatever the hell that even means. But the fact of the matter is that maybe there was a crime that was committed because someone was perceived as one race or another. So that makes those categories realistically exist, whether they are backed up by some sort of genetic coding or what is pretty much irrelevant. The point is that socially, those things exist, and both in the minds of the sociologist and in the minds of the people who are committing and in the minds of the people who are prosecuting. And so it's not something that you can necessarily explain away by saying that, well, people are just thinking in terms of race, so it's something, a problem with their assumption. There isn't really this category of race, because there is.
That's
So
because our solution is the one that is there, because there are those categories exist in the minds of other people. Even if you don't think that they make sense for you, you need to act towards that, doing something. And I think a way of a way of working towards that decategorization of society.
Okay.
A way of working toward that is giving other solutions, and our solution was that this action could work towards that.
Okay. 1 minute before to continue. We changed the level of our discussion. We was discussing about the assumptions, and after a while we began to discuss about the concept of race. Okay?
Well, I was getting to my follow-up question was, why do you assume that it's not about race?
It is about race. That's what we're saying. But we're saying, why should it be? Why don't you take it a step back and look at it as, that's what we're saying. That currently the frame is that we're looking at this as this is a race thing. Why aren't we looking at this like this is a problem, that our youth, are suffering from, whether they're black or white, whether they're white and doing drugs or whether they're black and doing, property crimes. The bigger picture, the larger issue, is that we have youth that are committing crimes, and we need to find solutions for our youth, no matter who they are, what color they are, where they come from, but to improve their lives, improve their environment, so that they don't end up in the system, whether they're black or white. We don't want any of them in there. So that's
Okay.
where we're going with that.
Remember
But
the
the
plans we need to have
disparities
in our minds, okay? Don't focus only in the problem in itself, but in the reasoning about the problem, okay? Here, and after you.
So, in your statement about needing more opportunities for youth, why do you think youth right now don't have opportunities?
Well, because they're choosing to do crime, so obviously whatever
But
their
that's a-
whatever their
that's
choice
okay,
is,
great,
whatever their
great.
choice is,
Yeah.
Right.
whatever their choice is, obviously, the crime must, be a better alternative, or because of their environment or background or whatever, these other, things that they're, choosing to do the crime. So that's why we need to take a step back and improve what's going on before they get here. We're looking at what's happening now that they're here. But we need to take a step back and improve what's going on before they get into the system. Part of that might be educating people, on race. That might be part of the solution.
Okay.
But you deal with that before they get into the system.
You will remake the question, something like that. So the next one, please wait him to finish his intervention.
What if I say, well, I believe they already have choices and opportunities?
Okay, so why are they choosing?
Exactly.
Why are they choosing crime?
Right. So it may not, for me, it may not be about they don't have choices.
Well, obviously, but I'm saying if you have a choice, you're going to take the better
That's your assumption.
option.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
Yeah. Okay, you got two assumptions, okay? Thank you very much. Now it's she after you.
I'll follow that up because you said like a while ago that solution is providing opportunities for all, whether it be black or white. But how does that link to the assumption then that you actually you're actually trying to pinpoint the determinant of juvenile delinquency as a racist thing, So because
Sorry? I didn't.
what I'm trying to say, your solution does not make sense. It doesn't make sense to me in terms of the problem if it's
Right.
racial. Yeah,
Because you're looking at the racial frame, but we're saying change the frame from race. We're saying we don't want to look at it as a racial frame.
Okay, because I thought, like you said, that's how it is viewed upon. I mean, the problem is that.
Right, that's what we're saying. Like now, the way that they set it up in this, they framed it in the frame of a racial issue, but we're saying we don't want to frame the problem that way.
So the problem to you then is simply like opportunities.
The solution is opportunities.
The problem
the problem doesn't
is
coincide. The solution doesn't. I don't know what the problem is.
The
You're
problem
only
is what
stating-
happens before
It's
they
correct,
get into the
it's
system,
correct,
whether
it's
they're
correct.
black
Because
or
you're
white.
only stating the problem in the terms of what it's not supposed to be. But what then
Right,
is
so
the
we're
problem?
reframing it and we're saying the problem is that you should look at it as, what happens to youth before they enter the system. How can we prevent them from entering the system, period, whether they're black or white?
Right.
Okay, thank you.
And the solution is, education. It might be improving people's economic status, providing them job skills, work opportunities. I mean, it would. You kind of have to take people where they're at, I guess. It would depend. But so the answer would be reframing the problem from race, and looking at how can we provide opportunities before people get into the system. Does that make sense?
Okay. Her questioning, it's okay. We have no formulation for the problem that fits with the solution. There's no problem now, but it's correct, your observation. Okay?
I guess I don't understand what the translation between opportunities and less youth crime. I don't understand. I mean, you're basically assuming that youth don't have enough opportunities, and that creating opportunities will somehow make youth commit less crime. So I think there's a lot.
Not just creating opportunities, and I would say, creating the right environment. I would add.
Okay, because
But yeah, that would be our assumption.
It is another assumption, no?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's necessary to create an adequate environment.
Right.
It's an assumption
Yeah.
that we have here.
Sorry.
Okay. No, it's correct. It's a function of the exercise to help to discover the assumption. It's working very well.
Guinea pig.
Okay. Thank you very much. What's the last group?
All right.
Do you have a shield? All right, so we've heard the problem is African American youths are referred to the penal system at much higher rates than youths from other races. So we proposed as a solution, first we wanted to get a model of trying to understand what we thought sort of was causing this. So we came up with our hypothesized crime model, which was that African Americans tend to have lower economic status, which we think sort of stems from lower education, or a combination of lower education, racism, and poor integration socially and geographically, economically. We believe this leads to higher crime. And so we wanted to test the theory via action research. So our proposal is if we did an intervention on education, that would increase empowerment of African American youths, which would then improve economic status, and then the combination of these factors would then lead to lower crime.
Okay. It's very clear the spousal theory, no? With hypothesis, everything is well constructed, very useful for us. Okay?
Why do you presume that lower economics, lower education, racism, and poorer integration leads to higher crime?
The hypothesis.
Yes. Why? Why do you believe that is this?
Why is that a good hypothesis?
What do you think that this hypothesis should be?
Why is that a better hypothesis than blacks commit more crimes?
Based on the information that we have from our own experiences and research, other research that has been published in the news.
Okay. Can you? Okay. Can you? Exactly. Can you give us? It's very interesting in this case. Sometimes we have not any study, a complete study about the question. We need some example. Okay? Some meaningful example that should help us to reinforce or not our trust in the hypothesis. Can you give us an example?
No, because my approach to it.
I don't know.
No, I don't have any citable research in front of me that I can say it's a hypothesis, it's an assumption based on my background and being in a society, be a member of a society.
Okay, that's all. Okay, it's your belief.
Well, I'd like to, and for me, it's based on my on-the-ground experience and work and interaction with Black youth, with Latino youth, with youth, brown-colored youth, and so it's based on real sort of experience. Yeah.
Would you say that there's, so you're saying basically that your experience is that youth they don't feel empowered, so they're angry? Or, I guess or they don't feel like they have enough money, or they can't do the things they want to do?
Yeah, within the context, say, for example, of a one-block radius environment geographically, youth who are incarcerated, youth who've been part of the juvenile justice system, when you really analyze how they got there, a lot of it has to do with lack of economics at home, lack of economics around access to education, poor sort of family condition, poor living environment. So it's really grounded in a lot of the things that they don't have, and
that leads to, what does that lead to that then leads them to commit crime? I guess would be an assumption that I'd be interested in hearing.
An assumption that, they can go out and they're committing crime to get access to the money to buy the things that society said you should have, like the sneakers and the this and this and the other, then they get those things fast, from their perspective, because they don't have access to the education that they need to go out and get a good job, or even that there's not even jobs available. So it's really, that's essentially it.
Okay.
Economics, it's really grounded in economics.
Why isn't the problem social demands pointed towards advertising and towards probably trying to fit in with particular groups by owning particular products? Why isn't that one of the issues?
It's that, but it's also sometimes just basic needs. Generations of this type of behavior are just their family generations who don't really have basic needs.
What if you have people who are, buying fancy cars on credit, even though they're eating Wonder Bread at home, just have this ostentatious display, or they stole the car or whatever.
Yeah, you have that, but on the other hand, you have people who don't have the fancy cars who are just basically trying to get the money to buy Wonder Bread and are walking to commit the crime to get the money to buy the Wonder Bread. So, I'm just trying to sort of show the balance between what I've seen in my work in the field, that while we popularize, the notion of having the bling bling, so to speak, on the other hand, you also have those who just don't have anything, and so they're engaged in criminal activity just to get basic needs that.
So,
she asked first,
So
Claudia.
what you're saying is that if they had all their material needs fulfilled, they wouldn't commit any crime.
No, I don't think that we can actually make that as a glaring assumption. I think there's always going to be crime, but I think that by and large, when you look at, in my work, from the work I've done in the past, the vast majority of crime is related to lack of needs being met. And so,
Okay. Thank you. We don't need to go forward to each point. The answer should be brief, and the question should be brief, and the answer brief. Okay? We have 2 minutes. After you.
The assumption is that the crimes that this will solve are those, and not necessarily the others. Are the economic crimes where people need something. Right? The solution that you propose is around, it will hopefully reduce that part of the percentage. It's not going to resolve all of the percentage or whatever the crime, but just that type of crime. The type of crime that is caused by a need for basic goods, basic needs.
that's one part of it.
Okay. Thank you. Ilma?
Do you believe that if the African American community are one of part of discriminating themselves of, like, it's almost like, well, we are black. That, like, I see a lot of issues where it's like a black this, a black gathering, a black this, where it's almost like the separation itself. And I think the kids at some point, like, growing up, seeing I'm black, and this is my reality. Instead of looking at themselves as just a person who lives in it, I feel like in the black, because we grew up, I'm black, I'm from Brazil, there's a lot of discrimination in Brazil as well, but I never seen as much because I'm black, and I hear, it's almost like you have to know you're black. And I'm like, oh, thank you for reminding me. And I find that sometimes is a problem in some of the community. And also the language and the culture itself of understanding being black not is, okay, being black, but it's a value. I always think I'm better because, I look better because I'm black. See the values of the community instead of the problems of the community. I think it's too much point of the problems instead of the values.
Okay.
I don't know.
Thank you.
Does that make sense?
Okay, yes. Do you want to answer? You can say yes or no.
I'm not sure what the question was.
Okay.
If the problem of discrimination even inside the African American community.
If there's discrimination within the African American community?
Like accepting other communities more than, like if you're black, you're black. And most of the integration is black. And a lot of problems happen because this is a black community. Does that make sense?
Okay. She's stating an assumption, and she's trying to verify if you agree or not with this assumption. Okay? This is the sense of her question.
No.
Okay. Thank you very much. The last one, very brief,
yes.
please.
Because you said something like if materials are given, do they actually, lessen the crime? I would like to say my assumption is that materials, in a sense, yes, because it's not just materials. You see that people are able to eat or buy anything. Because psychology also says that you know, the materials that people have something to eat, people have clothes, people have shelter, actually is also connected to a sense of personhood, to a sense of self-esteem, right? To a sense of the fact that you are able to provide for yourself, you can achieve, like, you know, feed your children, feed yourself, and all that. And those, it's not something that's just materials that people, you know, it actually.
Okay. She's stating her assumptions. Okay?
Yes, that's
okay.
my assumption.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you very much.
Those are important for listening the brain.
My evaluation is that the exercise worked. Okay? Was not easy for us. Our time is over. Okay? Tomorrow we will have a brief conversation about this. And I am sure that Claudia wants to make a last statement.
Should I do it now or tomorrow?
Tomorrow, because if you have something to say today.
I just think it's really interesting to see how difficult it was for you to get people. You were identifying assumptions, but you couldn't get others to express those assumptions. And it's all about how you find those questions. That's the hard part. Forgetting, and those questions, if you can if you can train yourself to find those questions, then you can use them for yourself as well.
And to maintain the mind at the cognitive level, okay? Always not trying to get to go forward in the discussion of the issue itself, but trying to discover the thinking of the other person. This is our exercise, and it worked well.